In 1453, the Ottoman army breached the walls of Constantinople, one of the most heavily fortified cities in the ancient world. The soldiers who led the final assault were not ordinary troops. They were the Janissaries, and the physical and mental conditioning that produced them was unlike anything that existed in Europe at the time. This is the story of the Ottoman Janissary system, the most sophisticated warrior development program of the medieval world, and the training that made them virtually unbeatable for over 2 centuries. The Janissary system began in the late 14th century under Sultan Murad I. The concept was radical for its time. The Ottoman Empire would take young boys, primarily from conquered Christian territories, through a system called Devshirme, and raise them from childhood as elite warriors completely loyal to the Sultan. No family ties, no tribal allegiances, no competing loyalties, just the Sultan and the Empire. The selection process itself was extraordinary. Ottoman officials would tour the provinces selecting boys aged 8 to 20 who demonstrated exceptional physical potential, height, build, strength, coordination, and intelligence. These boys were not chosen at random. They were assessed, evaluated, and selected with the same deliberateness that modern sports academies use to identify athletic talent. Once selected, the training began immediately, and it was comprehensive in a way that no European military training of the era approached. The Janissaries trained in archery, swordsmanship, wrestling, horsemanship, javelin throwing, and a form of close-quarters combat that combined elements of what we would now call ground fighting and striking. But this was not a menu of separate skills. It was an integrated physical development system designed to produce a complete warrior, one who could fight effectively in any context, under any conditions, at any level of exhaustion. The archery training alone was extraordinary. Ottoman composite bow archery was considered the finest in the world. The bows were made from layers of horn, wood, and sinew, materials with different elastic properties that when combined created a bow that could store and release energy far more efficiently than a simple wooden bow. Drawing these bows required upper body strength and shoulder stability that took years to develop. Janissary archers trained daily for years before they were considered competent. The most accomplished Ottoman archers were capable of accuracy and distance feats that modern archers, using equipment built with centuries of additional refinement, still struggle to match. The wrestling component of Janissary training, called Yargligers, or oil wrestling, has its own extraordinary history. Wrestlers competed covered in olive oil, making holds nearly impossible to maintain. This forced the development of grip strength, leverage, and body control far beyond what standard wrestling produced. Oil wrestling is still practiced in Turkey today, making it one of the oldest continuously practiced sports in the world. The physical qualities it develops, grip endurance, core stability, explosive hip movement, and psychological composure under the frustration of lost holds, are qualities that elite combat sports athletes today spend careers trying to develop. The horsemanship training began in early childhood and continued throughout a Janissary's career. Riding at military speed, shooting accurately from horseback, controlling the horse with the legs while both hands managed weapons, these skills required thousands of hours of practice. The combination of strength required to control a war horse and the fine motor control required to shoot accurately while moving at speed demands a physical and neurological development that is genuinely rare. But here is what made the Janissary system truly remarkable. It was not just physical. The Janissaries were connected to a Sufi Islamic order called the Bektashi. Their training incorporated meditation, breath control, and a form of psychological conditioning that prepared them for the chaos and terror of medieval combat. They were not simply strong. They were mentally unbreakable. Accounts from European observers who fought against Janissaries consistently describe men who showed no fear, who held formation under conditions that caused other troops to break, and who fought with a calm ferocity that contemporary Europeans found deeply unsettling. Modern sport psychology calls this state controlled arousal. The ability to remain functionally calm and focused under extreme threat, to channel fear into performance rather than flight. Elite Special Forces soldiers today are trained specifically in this skill. The Janissaries developed it through their Bektasha practice without ever using those terms. The results of this system were documented across 2 centuries of Ottoman military expansion. At the Battle of Kosovo in 1448, at the Siege of Constantinople in 1453, at the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, where the Janissaries helped defeat a Hungarian army in less than 2 hours. Battlefield after battlefield, the Janissaries performed at a level that the military forces of Europe, fighting man for man, could not match. What produced this? Selection. Specialization from childhood. Daily training without interruption. Physical development across multiple domains simultaneously. Mental conditioning integrated with physical training. And a complete institutional identity. The Janissaries did not have civilian lives. They were warriors full-time, from selection to death or retirement. The comparison to modern elite military training is obvious and instructive. The United States Army Rangers, the British SAS, the Israeli Shaytet 13, these organizations use selection processes and training regimens that the Janissaries would recognize. Find the most physically promising candidates. Train them comprehensively across multiple domains. Break down civilian identity and replace it with unit identity. Develop mental resilience alongside physical capacity. The Janissaries figured this out in the 14th century. They ran this program for over 200 years before internal politics and corruption eventually degraded the system. And when the system degraded, when the Janissaries became a hereditary caste, when their sons were admitted without selection, when the training standards dropped, the military results degraded with it. Precisely as you would expect. The lesson is direct. Physical and mental excellence are